The best things in life are free. If you're healthy, if your family is alive, if you're alive as well, if you've never experienced a war, experienced a famine, experienced anything horrific, you are just really, really lucky. You're top 1% in this world. You have a right to live and you have a right to live in dignity. In this modern world that we live in, the corporations, so that they can make profits, have to convince us that we lack something, that we are deprived of something that we can never really have. For example, a car can be sold as a symbol of status. A phone can be sold as a symbol of status. You can really see the marketing campaigns build on something called the fear of missing out when they're telling you that, hey, you need to buy this in 2 days time, or this offer will end. And this is the kind of world that we live in. We are constantly bombarded with things that remind us that we are really, really not okay as we are as a people, as a person. And when you just look into history, this thing just really, really fades away. When you look into the times where people have really faced hard times, for example, if you look into the Great Depression that happened in the 1920s and 30s, when you look into the Holodomor massacre that happened in Ukraine, when you look into World War II, the people who were in Berlin when the Soviet forces got into got into Germany, I mean, when you look into just the bubonic plague, when you look into the wars that have been fought throughout history, you can imagine the peasants that were there in the Napoleonic Wars, you can imagine the Opium Wars of China, you can really, really imagine the people who have gone through a lot of hardships. There, even as I speak right now in the world, there are people who are going through a lot of things. If you look into the Russian-Ukraine war, for example, you really see those clips online where soldiers are being murdered by drones, and that really tells you a lot about the world that we live in. And if you're not in those zones, if you're just if you've eaten, if you just have a place to sleep, if you have parents you can call, if you have friends, if you have a wife or a girlfriend, and you yourself you're healthy, and you don't have any chronic ailments, you're really just okay. You're okay enough. But this is not the world that we live in, of course. We live in a world where we are a commodity, and we work for the shareholders, and the shareholders actually have these deadlines that every time we have to meet. Every time you're not doing something, you really feel like you're not being productive. And we really don't even have time for leisure. We don't really have time to build culture in itself. There is no culture in this world that we live in. It's so depraved. We don't have remembrance days for people who have done great things in society, people who have shaped our art. Our art right now is literally dead. Everything is dead. There's no great architecture. There's no great music that you can go and listen to and actually have a personal transformation as a person. Everything now has been commodified, and you have been commodified. And this came to me when I was looking into the history of the 20th century, particularly into this guy called Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was a nephew to Sigmund Freud, and Sigmund Freud had his theories about human behavior, the root of human behavior, and his theories are well known. If you don't know, his main theory was that sexual behavior is what drives human beings, and inside a human being, the personality of a human being or the behavior of a human being can be rooted or can be categorized. I don't know if categorized is the right word, but the root cause of human beings is the unconscious forces that are beneath his mind, and there's just little tiny ego that controls the deep unconscious. It's like the image of an iceberg, and this iceberg you have the unconscious, which is really, really below the sea level. Then you have the ego, which is just there, and then there's a super ego, which is a societal forces that impact the behaviors and shape your ego to become a civilized man in society. So, in his theory, human beings are really not that civilized. Civilization is something very tenuous and fragile. And in his theory, human beings have unconscious desires, and these desires have not yet been tapped into. So, Edward Bernays picked on the Sigmund Freud's theory and used it for businesses and corporations in order to advertise. So he leveraged on the fact that inside every human being there are unconscious desires that are seated there, and you don't really know them, but you act out them. You act out on them in the world, but you're really not aware of them. And these corporations picked up on the theories of Edward Bernays and decided that they are going to use it against the masses. So, for example, if you're selling a car, the way to do that is not to appeal to the conscious and the rational parts of a person's mind. So when you sell a car, you can go and tell someone, "Hey, when you buy this car, this is the features that this car has. This car will allow has this consumption of fuel. It will allow you to go from place A to place B with this amount of fuel, which is going to cost X money." That's really not the way to sell a car. What When you want to sell a car, you go to a person's mind, you analyze this person, they have their unconscious desires. For example, they might have a desire to be liked. They might have a desire to appear high status. They might have a desire to be admired by women or admired by their friends. So when you know these unconscious desires that are driving them to make purchasing decisions, now you can leverage on this unconscious desire. So instead of telling someone, for example, that this car will help you go from place A to place B, no, that does not work. You just go and tell them that if you buy this car, your friends will respect you. If you buy this watch, it means that you're a high status person. That is Rolex. That is the marketing campaign of Rolex. You buy Rolex because you're rewarding yourself and you are putting yourself in an echelon of society that is high status in the society. When you buy this car, girls will like you. Or, okay, if you're aiming to get approval or attention from boys, that is the same way they use it against you. And this is really the world that we live in. Every time we come across these advertisements that actually tap into insecurities. For example, this is how the manosphere space is really going right now. When you see that the young men are in a position where they cannot have girlfriends, so the gurus, and there is no particular credential for these gurus to go and get their degrees or get their expertise. It's just a it's a pseudoscientific thing. It really does not apply maybe the scientific method. Although if you go and look into whatever they're saying, actually it does make sense a lot. Actually, I really don't, it's not like I disagree with it. The point is there's an actual serious crisis in the dating market, and demographics are collapsing worldwide. Even Africa, the continent that is the most reproductive, is actually now starting to collapse. When you go and have conversations with the Gen Zs right now, in Kenya for example, you'll actually find out that many Gen Zs do not plan to have children. And there's a lot of reasons why people do not want to have children. There's an economic factor, of course. Then there's just the world around us is too hostile, maybe, but I don't think it's as hostile as hostile can get. But these gurus, these marriage gurus, who imagine calling yourself a marriage guru. So, a marriage guru comes and gives you advices on what you're supposed to do as a person, and sometimes what I think is wrong in this manosphere space is people actually there's these courses that people subscribe to, and you can really see how the capitalistic mind works, because when there's a problem, okay, people now come up with a solution, which is an enterprise, and the enterprise really has to run on money. So it's it does seem like it's really a cold world when you look into it, because it really does feel like people just leveraging and capitalizing on a problem that is really not something that can be solved with money. But this is the world that we live in. So when you look into the leading manosphere spaces, I'm also aware that there's a famosphere. I don't know if it's called famosphere. I'm not really sure about the word, but these are people who just come up, leverage on or capitalize on a problem, capitalize on insecurities. For example, in the male space, you're told that if you do this thing, or if you read this blog, which is behind a paywall, of course, you'll attract more women. So young men with the desires to have many girlfriends click on that, pay on it, and at the end of the day, I don't know if it works or it doesn't. I've never really done something like that, and but maybe it does work or it doesn't work. I'm not really sure about that. But the main point is, we really living in a world where we are constantly being told that you are not enough. When you get into social media, And again, social media is also built on this basis because, for example, if you're a creator like I am, the algorithms reward you in a way that is not linear, I can say. So that it's really like a gambling machine, and the gambling people, the people who design the gambling machines, know that in the mind, the reward circuits in the mind actually work really, really well when it's unpredictable. So you find when you go to bet, for example, when you place a bet, you win this time, you lose this time, you lose this time, you win this time, and when you win after many losses here in the middle, when you win after many losses in the middle, it really has a lot of meaning. But when you look into the bigger picture, you start to see that, hey, the house always wins. So you've spent a lot of money in this loss cycle that even when you win, the money that you've lost cannot be recovered by the money that you've won. And social media actually does the same thing. The algorithms push and reduce the reach of your videos in a way that it is not in a linear way, so that you cannot even make sense of an algorithm rationally. It's just like it's really more. Sometimes you can hack it linearly. Sometimes you can just post random stuff to see what is being pushed by the algorithm, and this is what happens in social media and virality, so that people can be hooked on this website, so that social media can actually advertise the clients who have used it as an advertising tool to advertise it to you, or use a video to advertise to you, then share the profits between the creators and the advertisers and the company, I mean. So this is the kind of world that we live in. Social media is actually a very good tool, a very helpful tool when you use it as a tool. And but you know, things are double natured. Things are a double sword in this world. There's a duality in everything. You can use something as a tool, and it can be used against you as a weapon. So when you get into social media, you see your friends posting the best parts of their lives. You really don't see them in the lowest of their moments. You don't see them in just the mundane world that they're living in, the days that they have bad days, when they are not dressed as good as when they are posing in front of the camera. This is just what you were bombarded with day in, day out. And this comparison thing gets into you, and really, really makes you feel like you're not in the right space, like you're doing something wrong with your life, because maybe you're a private person, or maybe you're not a private person. It depends on the nature of who you are as a person. But many people, of course, you cannot, it will be really naive to say that many people, or people just post out of good intentions all the time. There's a time where people just post cunningly with other intentions, and this is maybe the main intention when they're posting. And when it gets to you, you start to feel like you're not enough. You start to feel like, hey, without me having this certain brand, it makes me feel not okay. When I don't have a car, when I don't have this brand of a shoe, when I don't have this many pairs, and it really gets into a point where it becomes very toxic, but that you cannot even post a picture when you've repeated the same outfit. So that's the kind of world that we live in. You're constantly bombarded with things that make you feel like you're not enough, you're never enough. And when you just look into the broader scale of things, you start to understand that we are actually losing touch to the things that are most important in our lives. We are losing touch to our parents when when we are competing for status games. We are losing touch to the friends we have around us when we start to look at them as people we compete with rather than people who we can collaborate with to work towards a bigger goal. And even as a creator who understands how the algorithm works in that way that I've just described earlier, I can even fall into pits of comparing myself with other creators. So, and feeling bad because I'm not having virality. This is human thing. This is human stuff. The best way to beat these things are actually is awareness, having the awareness to know that, hey, I'm doing this and this is not justified because this thing has not worked for me. So this is the world that we live in right now, and we lose touch to God. Those things that we have inside us. We have our talents, the things that come easy to us, the things that we just do, the things that we just love. How many of those things have we sacrificed because they do not fit what is hot in the society right now? For example, I'm just going to use a very great example. I've never Okay, I've not come across people who consider themselves as consider themselves as great writers or great literary artists, because it's not cool right now. There's no time that there's no way you can find someone who just writes stuff and wants to write articles or write great books. There's none of that today, because we are really living in a world where constantly sacrificing ourselves because we feel like there's this giant way that we are supposed to exist, and if you don't fit that giant way, you see yourself as someone who is very very different, and so because you are different, you actually many people sacrifice themselves. Other people have the courage to follow their own paths, follow their own intuitions, follow their own visions. And these are the people we should reward as a society, because they remind us to also look into ourselves more and see what we really desire to say, really desire to put out in the world, to add to the universe. So, this insecurity that is constantly being sold to us is something that we really, really need to look into, something that we really, really need to overcome. It's something that we really need to tap into our own selves and our own individual self, and tap into God, tap into the identity that God put inside of us. When you do that, it will lead you to the best of self, the best of the self that you can become. And so my question to you is, how many people do you know have sacrificed their own talents, sacrificed their own worth, sacrificed what they believed in, because it did not fit what was trending right now. So this is the world that we live in. This is the sad reality, and this is something that we should overcome. The best things in life are free. For example, if you're healthy, if you're not lying in a sick bed, if you're not in war, you're not in the front lines fighting drones and fighting soldiers who are aiming to kill you in this moment, if you've never seen anyone in your family close to you die, if you're a sister, if you're a brother, if you have a niece, if you have a son is healthy, all these things we do take for granted. But the world and the universe really has a way to up one on you, you know. And when you lose someone who is close to you, or when you just lose something that you held dear for a very long time and you are not even aware that it was dear to you, that's the actual moment you start to wake up and start to see that, hey, these things that we are really rushing towards, these things that we found in our society. For example, when we look into the modern myth, we find that, hey, being rich is actually one very big deal. But when you start to just analyze, I'm not saying that it's justified for you to be poor. There's no joy in poverty. Let's not lie to ourselves here. When you have money, of course, you have options. You can access the best healthcare that is right now. You can access the best food. You can get yourself sort of situation. You can get yourself out of situations that are not viable or not uh, strategically benefiting you. That's the advantage of really having money. And money is a very, very important tool when it is used as a tool. But in the modern world, our modern myth is really not using money as a tool. It's really, money is more like an end. Money is when I have money, this is the time that I'll enjoy life. You see, that's a really bad mindset to have. Instead of saying, I can enjoy my life when I'm looking for money, or not just looking for money. The principle for having money is creating value. So you can really you can really enjoy your life when you're creating value, and money will come as a consequence. We don't aim to be people who are worth having the money. We just aim to have the money. So when we aim to have the money, the means that you use to get this money does not really matter. What matters is, hey, well, how much did I have when I died in my bank account? Did I have $10 million? Did I have $1 million? Did I have $500,000? You see, this is the kind of mindset that is really, really corrupting us as a people, as humanity. When I'm speaking right now, we really don't look into the process of making the money. When we die in our deathbeds, we don't really ask ourselves, hey, did I live the life that I wanted to live? Did I express the things that were inside me honestly? Was I honest in this life? Did I take advantages of the opportunities that life granted me? Did I appreciate the people who were around me enough? You know, we don't really aim to become a person. We really just aim to become this guy who is rich. And when you get rich, that's the time that you start thinking, I'll take a lot of vacations, I'll do this, I'll do that. But this is very sad. This is the world that we live in, and I'm hoping that you can take time, really look around you, Appreciate your environment, appreciate the people, appreciate the talents that God has placed inside you. There are seeds that are inside you that are very, very important, and humanity needs them really, really urgently. You need to express them. You need to tell us the truth. You need to show us your expression. And because the world needs it, we really need that talent. We really need that runner. Really need that engineer. We really need that philosopher. We really need that actor, great literary artist. We really need to go back to the state that we were as a child and access that state, and then we now the world will flourish. So those are my thoughts on this. What do you think? Let me know your answers in the comment section.